Welcome back to Taiwan Outlook. Our guest today is Professor Peter Chow, and Professor Chow is a professor of economics at City University of New York. He is also a consultant to the World Bank. Professor Chow, we've been talking about some sort of economic arrangement between Taiwan and China, and some people propose the so-called common market, and you have some reservation about that. Why is that?
Well, actually, the common market is the third step or the fourth step of the economic integration. Usually, when two economies, try to pursue closer economic relationships, the two economies usually sign a so-called preferential trade area.
Yeah.
That's the first step. The second step is, the free trade agreement between them. That is, not only preferential trade, but, there's no tariff between the two countries. Mm-hmm. Yet, both countries, each one of them can adopt their own tariff to the third party.
That's right.
And the third step is the so-called the common market. But I think people who talk about the common market didn't have the sense of this kind of gradualism. Yeah. All right. Even the preferential trade agreement between Taiwan and China is beyond reach given the current circumstances. Mm-hmm. So how can we expect a common market to work it out?
Mm-hmm. But what, if that's the case, what would be the best solution for Taiwan to manage its economic relationship with China?
I think the best solution for Taiwan's economy is to maintain his economic dominance, the technological dominance, and the initiative of the foreign investment, and try to reduce the Taiwan's vulnerability to the sudden attack from China.
Yeah.
Taiwan should integrate his economy with the rest of the world, including China. But Taiwan should not integrate his economy only into China.
Yeah.
Globalization is different than just integrate with China, but rather than to globalize. Integrate with the old country in the world.
Yeah, President, you mentioned that Taiwan should maintain its own technological advantages or niches, and so that has to do with Taiwan's industrial policies. So what would be your solution or suggestion for Taiwan's industrial strategies?
I think the manufacturing sector in total GDP has to cut from 32% now to about 25%, and this is fairly reasonable by comparison with the industrialization experience of the OECD. So I think that in the future that the industrial sector or the manufacturing sector just had to keep those the dominance, maintain the comparative advantage on those core industry. Mm-hmm. And then about 73% of the total GDP is in the services sector. Yeah. So I think, now instead of emphasize the manufacturing industry, we should emphasize more on the competitiveness, on the comparative advantage of the services sector.
Yeah. But do you think Taiwan is strong enough or competitive enough in terms of services sectors? Because we know that other countries, including places like Hong Kong, Shanghai, or even other cities and countries are also trying to get into this kind of service sector. Yeah,
but in fact, the insurance sector, and relatively speaking, some other, wholesale, transport sectors, Taiwan is highly competitive.
Yeah.
For example, transportation sector, Evergreen, is number one in terms of cargo vessels. Mm-hmm. Those is highly compatible. All right. So within this 73% of the GDP in the services sector, Taiwan still can identify some of the niche industry, niche sectors to expand it and to globalize.
Mm-hmm. What are the most important bases for Taiwan's competitiveness in terms of service sector?
I think transportation industry, insurance sector.
Insurance,
because of the cultural background, Taiwanese insurance industry has a strong competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. And if Taiwan's insurance sector can have some coordination or even joint venture with American insurance company to penetrate into the Chinese market or Southeast Asia, which is great potential.
In recent years, we are also seeing some sort of merger of banks between Taiwan local banks and also international banks. Do you think it's a healthy development in terms of upgrading Taiwan's competitiveness?
Yeah, because globalization means that winners take all. Yeah. So in order to not to be a loser, Taiwan has to be a winner. Mm-hmm. So that in terms of the size and the capital volumes, Taiwan's banking sector still relatively small by comparison to Japan and the U.S. So the merge with all those consulting bank and diversify their business, this is a healthy development.
How about investment strategies? Can the government do anything to diversify our investments in a more broader sense?
I think, as I said before, the government can provide some institutional infrastructure by providing some consultants and some information support But instead of being the initiator of the investor, government, as a bystander, as a supporter of the foreign investment.
But eventually people will be talking about defining relationship for Taiwan's economic future. It would be cross-strait economic relationship. And the two arguments, one suggests that there should be more relaxation of restrictions, but the other one suggests that we should have better control, better management of the economic relationship between the two sides. What's your take on that?
I think Taiwan has liberalized his trade flow to China as much as is necessary. So important thing is for China to to make his trade policy compatible with the WTO standard. Once you make your trade policy compatible with the WTO standards, then no country can complain too much regulations. So the question is not to liberalize or not to liberalize, but rather how much to liberalize. And the cutoff point, I think is fulfill the WTO standard.
So if we are conducting our trade with China in this kind of WTO standard, there will be no problem?
That is my exploration, that Taiwan need not to be hostile with China, and Taiwan can trade and trade with China based on the WTO framework. And if there's any dispute, then they should go to the trade dispute settlement mechanism under the WTO regulation, rather than the current issue that you had the entrust the private sector and then to negotiate. I think Taiwanese government would have to persuade the businessmen, and I think the Taiwanese businessmen has to realize that only the government can negotiate the trade dispute.
That's right.
All right.
So apparently for Taiwan, the economic challenges come not only from China, but also from other countries as well.
Right.
So what are the possible challenges that Taiwan has to face in this process of globalization?
I think Taiwan can only globalize more, but rather than less. But of course, as I say, globalization means the winners take all. And Taiwan should try to avoid to be a loser, but try to approach the winner. So in that regard, I would think that many of those well-established companies, they have a good connection, good coordination, good business contact with American company. They can somehow work out with a joint venture, a strategic alliance. And because of the cultural and the language factors, the American company will be benefit from this strategic alliance with the Taiwanese company by penetrate into the Asia market, including China.
But I think it's for many companies, U.S. companies in particular, they have been saying that if you don't have three links between the two sides of Taiwan Strait, it will be very difficult for them to have a joint ventures with Taiwanese companies, or even to produce goods here in Taiwan or in China. What's your take on that?
I can understand why the American Chamber of Commerce blamed Taiwan about not to speed up the three-third link. But I think the deadlock on the three-third link is not that the Taiwan government don't want to open up the three link. Actually, among the three links, two already direct link.
Yeah, that's right.
The only one is only the
air link.
The air links, right? But when you look at the air link, it requires both parties to sit down and to talk.
That's right.
Without any precondition, right? And so the deadlock is, U.S. Chamber of Commerce or American businessmen, they should not blame Taipei for not have the direct flight, but rather the Beijing to insist the precondition for negotiating with Taiwan. Okay. And number two, I would think that some people some people always put the cart in front of the horse. Taiwan is relatively small to China, all right? And unfortunately, China is not friendly to Taiwan, right? If it's as what they say, it's a peaceful race, and they want to treat Taiwan, as independent country, then there's no problem, right? If a small country deal with a larger country which are hostile to a small country, I think the small country has the right to protect, for self-protection, for his survival. So Taiwan has to be more cautious to open up the direct link. That is a necessary step for survival, to safeguard his national security. Taiwanese government has to make this kind of statement to be acceptable, to be understood by the rest of the world.
But apparently, although you are economists, that you pay a lot of attention to the politics in the region, and apparently China has been blocking other countries from signing FTAs with Taiwan, with the hope that eventually Taiwan will be dependent on China market. So what can we do to overcome that kind of difficulties?
I still strongly believe that the democracy is going to win, and the democracy is going to override the, the authoritarian regime. So therefore, if Taiwan's democraticalization can continue without external threat and without external shock, eventually the rest of the world had to recognize Taiwan as a democratic country. And in that regard, China will have to, not to recognize, if they don't want to recognize, they have to acknowledge as a democratic country, and China has to go through the WTO standards, by trading friendly with Taiwan, and not resolve those issues. So I think the fundamental issue for the economic problem is still at the politics.
That's right.
That if Taiwan's democraticalization can be consolidated and can move forward, and the people, are better educated, become a more mature, citizens in a democratic society. All those, pending issues on economic problem can be resolved easily.
Okay.
Even though as an economist, I hesitate to point out that I have no solution. I require the political scientists to do it. But the more I'm thinking about it, the more I rely on you people in political science.
But Taiwan government did try to diversify some of our investments. For instance, we did sign the so-called FTA with Panama and some Latin American countries. Does that help?
It helps. At least it's a symbolic, breakthrough to say, okay, we still have some people who are interested to sign the FTA with us, even though in terms of the real trade volume with those 2 or 3 countries is very small. But you understand that, United States has some free trade agreement with American state, right? So in other words, if Taiwan has a free trade agreement with those Latin American country, and Latin American country has a free trade agreement with the US. So this is a link, indirect link, even it's not a direct, but that will help. So I think it's very healthy.
So that's a good policy for Taiwan to bypass all those.
That is a very important breakthrough to avoid further isolation. And I don't think Taiwan is being marginalized. That is an over-exaggeration. Their concern may be, for the benefit for Taiwan, but their judgment and their conclusion was wrong.
But Taiwan is an Asian country, East Asian countries. So we do pay more attention to the regional integration in the region. So if Taiwan is the only country not being included in this regional integration process, will that help or will that hurt Taiwan in some way? Okay,
there are two things we can talk about. Okay, Taiwan is a member of the APEC, and within the APEC, that they have a very, very important issue on their agenda. That the APEC is going to liberalize the free trade between the industrialized country in 2010. Now it's 2007. So almost 2 or 3 years, if this agenda move around, Taiwan will be enjoy the free trade with all the APEC, all the industrialized countries within the APEC. And by 2020, that the APEC is going to extend the free trade to all countries, industrialized or not. So that is a little bit a long-term perspective. Within the short run, Taiwan should try to adopt the diversification of the foreign direct investment strategy. By adopt the so-called tariff jumping strategy. That is, you use foreign direct investment as a leverage, similar to Japan's automobile industry in the 1980s to break through the U.S. The so-called voluntary export constraint, which is a tariff discrimination. That is to say, Japan was able to overcome the tariff discrimination against Japanese automobile. So Taiwan has been discriminated for joining the FTA, which is true. But why Taiwan adopt a similar strategy of the tariff jumping to break through this kind of isolation? So that is a way for the Taiwanese government and the Taiwanese businessmen to work together.
So do you think our government has been doing the right thing in looking back?
I think, consider that so many, important agenda on the government, in terms of the economic strategy, I cannot expect any more country do anything better than government in Taiwan. Because I've been observing and I've been as a consultant of the World Bank. As a matter of fact, I visited so many developing countries, and none of those developing countries is comparable to Taiwan.
Yeah, Professor Chow, thank you very much for giving us a very comprehensive and very insightful analysis.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for watching Taiwan Outlook, and see you next week.